always wanted Cub Scouts, okay? But we have a special treat tonight, okay? We have a whole bunch of animals, and we have a special speaker tonight that is awesome.
Is it her?
Yes, yes, and her name is, how do you yeah. Okay, but we have to listen to what she says, okay? And she obviously did a little line, you gotta always pay attention to that, okay?
Bye.
All right.
Parents.
I'm sure you guys may have questions. We have registration information. Part of the thing is, it's nice about this is if you have questions, we can talk in the back. And the nice part is the kids have a chance to watch the animal show at the same time. So if you have questions, we have all the information in the back. Come see us. Okay? And I'll leave everything up to you.
Okay, great.
All right? Enjoy the animal show, guys.
Okay. You know what there looks like? I know. She's not a soul. What's that? You know what that's like? Yep.
Well, good evening, boys and girls, and moms and dads. My name is Michelle, and I'm here today to show you and teach you about animals.
Yeah.
I live in Londonderry, New Hampshire, and living in my house with me, not out in the yard and not in a barn, but right in the house, I have more than 150 animals. I did not bring them all here today. There are 11 different animal shows that I do. So I have animals from Africa, the Americas, and Australia, a group of bugs and mammals and reptiles, animals from the deserts around the world, the rainforests, the savannas,
I like reptiles,
and woodland animals. The very special group I was asked to bring today is a group called African Adventure, and I will take out the animals after you hear the rules, and there's only 3 of them, okay? The first rule is to please sit crisscross applesauce. That's going to help everyone to sit still. We're going to do questions at the end, not the beginning, okay? And this friend over here, if you can pull around so you're behind the rope, okay? That helps you to stay within my line of sight. Awesome. Front row people, there's a rule just for you. You see the big blue rope on the floor?
Yeah.
You want to make sure your fingers, toes, elbows, knees, and nose stay over your side of the rope. The animals and I are going to stay on this side. And the only tough thing I'm going to ask, and this is a tough one, you ready for this one? If you have a question or a comment, you have to wait till the end of the program when all the animals are put away. If there's time, I'll answer your questions. So you have to leave your hand down till the end of the program. And can you give that toy to a mom or a dad to hold so there's nothing that might make noise while we're doing the show?
It's a water gun. And it's broken.
And I'm going to ask this friend to please sit crisscross applesauce. It helps you to stay still. These are animals that are from Africa. Could we walk to Africa? No. We would have to take a plane. Or if we had lots of time, we could take a boat. You could not take a train. You could not take your bikes. Because there's a lot of water, a lot of ocean between us and Africa. Now in Africa, part of it is a desert. What's the weather like during the day in a desert? Who can tell me? Hot, right. In a desert, it's very, very hot and very, very dry during the day. And parts of Africa would be a rainforest. Who knows what the weather's like in a rainforest? Warm and rainy, awesome. And part of Australia is a savanna. And a savanna is like a desert part of the year.
And you're
And you're going to have to stay very quiet.
Okay.
All right. The part of Australia is the savanna, and the savanna can kind of be like a desert part of the year, and almost like a rainforest the other part of the year. Now the first animal I'm going to take out is a tiny little bird, and a whisper voice what covers the bird's body. Feathers, right. All birds are animals covered with feathers. Not all birds can fly, but most of them can. Now, when I take out the bird, we're going to have to stay all the way quiet and still, or the animals will get scared, okay? My first bird is from the African deserts. His name is Dwight, and Dwight is an African dove. And this is Dwight the dove. Now, Dwight can fly high and fast. And to help him fly very high and very fast, he has beautiful, long, strong wings. And with those wings, he can fly high up in the African skies. But when he's looking for food, being high up in the air is not going to help him at all. When he goes looking for food, he wants to be down in the desert sand. He doesn't eat sand, but there's something hiding in the sand that he would love to eat, and that would be seeds. And with that tiny little beak, he can push down into the sand and pick out tiny little seeds. And if part of the sand is really, really dry and hard, he can use his long, sharp claws to dig down in the sand to help him find those seeds. Now, doves are a symbol of peace and a symbol of love. And you know what? If you have a boy dove and a girl dove together, they stay together forever. No such thing as getting a divorce. So I guess that certainly is love. But you know what? If you have a boy dove in the same part of the desert with another boy dove, there will be no peace and there will be no love. There'll just be war. They will fight and fight and fight till maybe one of those doves cannot get up and fight anymore. So the symbol of peace and love is only when it's a boy dove and a girl dove. And to the moms out there, if you've ever been to the weddings with the beautiful white dove release, people think that's so romantic. They just want to get to the wedding on time to see that beautiful white dove release. If someone told you during the middle of the ceremony they were going to have a flock of pigeons flying overhead, you'd probably decide to stay home and miss that part. A white dove release is a white homing pigeon release. Never a white dove, so it is a flock of pigeons flying overhead. Just doesn't have the same romantic tone to it, though. Now, in a quiet whisper, what kind of bird is this? A dove. What bird is a symbol of peace and love? A dove. Anyone think they can spell the word dove? Do you think you can? You know, that's how dove sounds, but it's actually, you had spelled it.
D-O-V.
D-O-V-E, but it sounds like there's a U in there. So in a whisper voice, what bird is this? A dove. What bird is a symbol of peace and love? A dove. I brought 8 desert animals. How many have you seen? How many have you not seen? 7. All right. Now the next animal is also from the deserts. It is not a feathery bird. It is a scaly reptile. He comes from the deserts in northern Africa, and his name is King Tut. But I can't take him out until we're quiet because we don't want the animals to get frightened. Good job, boys and girls. And this little guy is King Tut. He is a reptile, and reptiles do not have feathers like birds, but scales. And King Tut is a baby. When he's all grown out, if he lay down on my hand, his tail would come way up past my elbow. But he's still little with a lot of growing to do. He is shedding right now, and that means some of his old, dried up, scaly skin can actually peel right off. Now, when his skin is peeling off, that is actually not a bad thing. That is a very good thing. It means he's moving around, he's growing, his skin is wearing out, and as his old skin wears out, he grows brand new skin underneath. Now, if my skin was peeling off, that would not be a good thing. What animal could be making that sound? You can guess. What animal do you think it could be? Do you know it sounds like an owl? Just like an owl. But it's not an owl. What animal do you think it could be? You forget. Anyone else want to guess? It is not a lizard. Most lizards, I'm glad to say, are very, very quiet.
It's an alligator.
It's not an alligator. They would be quiet too. It is a bird, but who knows what kind of bird? It is the dove. The dove is cooing to call out to see if if there's any friends in this room. Would anyone like to coo back to the dove so he knows he has friends? Go ahead, let me hear you. Awesome. Sounds like he has a whole flock of friends in this room. Now I'm going to tell you something. The dove will probably coo again in a few minutes, but you boys and girls have done all the cooing you're allowed to do, okay? So no cooing back next time. The desert lizard will walk through the deserts. She will never get a sunburn because she's covered in scales. Scales are made like our fingernails. And in the summer, on a warm, sunny day when you boys and girls to go out to play and you have to put sunblock all over your body, don't waste sunblock on your fingernails or your toenails. They'll never get a sunburn. And lizards and other reptiles covered with scales, they'll never get sunburned either. Now, as the desert lizard walks around, she's going to be looking for food. There could be a couple plants growing in the desert. Not many, but a couple. And if she sees plants and if she's hungry, she'll walk right over and nibble on those plants. What did the dove find to eat in the deserts? Do you remember? Seeds, right. And the desert lizard will love seeds. So she'll use her sharp little claws to dig down in that ground and find some seeds to eat. Now sometimes, as she's walking around in the desert, a big animal might try to sneak up behind her. He's not going to get too close, and she's going to know that he's there. Instead of running from the big hungry animal, the desert lizard is actually going to slow down, let that big hungry animal get closer to her, and then the desert lizard is going to stop and let that big hungry animal catch up to her. And when he gets ever so close, she's going to use her very sharp, spiny tail to swat that big hungry animal. Now this desert lizard is a baby. As she gets bigger, the tail will get longer. The sharp thorn-like structures on the tail will get longer and sharper. Her tail will get stronger. And when an animal gets swatted by this tail, usually they'll back right off and decide to leave the desert lizard alone. Now in a whisper voice, what reptile is this? A desert lizard. What reptile has a very spiny tail? A desert lizard. What bird was a symbol of peace and love? The dove. How many animals have we seen? 2. How many did I bring? 8. How many have you not seen yet? 6. Awesome. I'm going to put the desert lizard back. Now the next animal, also from the deserts in Africa, is not a reptile, is not a bird. The next animal is a mammal. Who knows what covers a mammal's body?
An elephant?
No, what covers a mammal's body? An elephant certainly wouldn't be covering an animal's body, or that animal would be squished. Fur. Mammals are animals that are covered with hair or fur. Now, hair and fur is usually soft and fluffy. How's your hair feel? Mine feels soft. Maybe a little messy, but fluffy. Fur on cats and dogs and many other animals feels soft and fluffy. But the fur on this next animal is totally the opposite. Who knows the opposite of soft? Hard. And the opposite of fluffy would be stiff. So even though this animal is covered with fur, the fur is hard and stiff, so I have to put on gloves. Now this next big animal comes from the deserts of Madagascar. Who has seen all the great Madagascar cartoons? Now this animal has never yet been in any cartoon that I've seen, but I hope if they make another Madagascar cartoon, I sure hope this next animal will be a star. His name is Thomas, and Thomas is an animal you may never have heard of. Thomas is a tenrec. Can you whisper that? Tenrec. Since he comes from the deserts, he likes it really warm, so he's in this box with a heating pad, and then he's covered with a couple blankets to help him really stay warm. And this little guy is Thomas the tenrec. He is not a hedgehog, even though he looks a little bit like a hedgehog. I think hedgehogs are actually much cuter than tenrecs would ever be. He's covered with fur, but you can probably tell that the fur on his back and sides is hard and sharp and stiff. That's why I always wear gloves when I hold the tenrec. The fur on his belly is kind of soft and fluffy. The fur on his face and legs is kind of soft and fluffy also. This fur that's hard and sharp and stiff is called quills. And quills are made when little pieces of fur get all stuck together. If I did not wear my gloves and I put my hand on the quills, it would hurt. So I always wear gloves when I pick up the tenrec. Now, Thomas obviously is a boy tenrec. But girl tenrecs are very, very special mammals because a girl tenrec can have more babies all at once than any other mammal in the world. All at once she could have how many babies? Who would like to guess?
200 million.
Well, that's a little bit on the high side, 200 million.
50.
Who knows what 50 take away 10 would be?
40.
40. She can have about 40 babies all at the same time. And she might have 40 babies this week, and then a few months down the road have another 40 babies. Lots of animals can have lots of babies throughout the year, but the tenrec gives birth to more live little babies than any other animal. Who would like to guess what Thomas the tenrec would eat if he lived in the deserts of Madagascar?
Sand?
He would not eat sand. There aren't many animals that would. What do you think he'd eat?
Seeds.
He would not eat seeds. Lots of animals do, like the dove and the desert lizard eat seeds, but not the tenrec. What do you think?
But
You are right, he eats bugs. Any kind of bug the tenrec would find, he would love to eat. But he can eat more than just bugs. He can also eat tiny little animals. Who can think of a tiny little animal that is not a bug?
I think like, no, I was thinking about an ant, but that's not an ant.
Right, but that's a bug. He would eat ants, but let's think of teeny tiny little animals.
Baby froggy.
A baby mouse. Well, a worm would be kind of considered a bug. What do you think?
I think a baby millipede.
Yeah, and that would kind of be considered a bug also. But he might eat baby mice. There could be baby birds on the ground he might eat.
Baby bats.
There might be baby lizards. There could be baby snakes. Anything very little would probably be a good meal for a tenrec. Now, what letter does tenrec begin with?
T.
Can you cross your legs so you're not touching the rope? Awesome. I'm going to bring Thomas the tenrec closer to you and try to get a good look at his eyes.
I noticed a
I'm
tiny
gonna check.
light.
Right now, his eyes are all the way open, but they're so teeny and tiny, they're really, really hard to see.
I can see them.
Because they're so teeny and tiny, late at night in the dark, the tenrec is actually blind. So when he wants to find his way around, down in the bottom, since he can't rely on his eyesight, he finds his way around using echolocation. You guys say that big word?
Echolocation.
And what other animal uses echolocation? A bat. Who knows another animal that's a mammal that lives in the water that uses echolocation?
Fish.
Not fish.
Dolphins.
Whales and dolphins, right. So they all use echolocation. And they're all mammals. Even though bats fly, they're mammals. Dolphins and whales swim, they're mammals. And the tenrec is a mammal. So what mammal is this? A tenrec. What mammal can give birth to more live little babies than any other mammal? Tenrec. What bird was a symbol of peace and love? The dove. And what reptile had a very spiny tail? The desert lizard. Awesome. The next animal, I think, is the cutest animal I brought today. But before I take him out, I've got to make sure Thomas the Tenrec is going to be warm. So I'm going to first roll him up in his flannel blanket, and then roll him up in his thermal blanket, and put him in his box on top of a heating pad, and let's hope he's going to be warm enough now. Now for the next animal, we have to be very, very quiet and very, very still. It is a furry mammal, but a mammal that gets frightened very, very easily. If you're extra quiet, you might hear this mammal making some pretty unusual sounds. We gotta wait till everyone's quiet though. Gotta wait till you're quiet, guys. Awesome job, all right. This little guy's name is Fabu, and Fabu is a fox from the African deserts. Is he a grown-up or a baby? He's a grown-up. He's a pretty old fox. He's about 12 years old. He's as tiny as a baby fox that lives around here would be. And this fox, the African fennec fox, is the smallest kind of fox in the whole wide world. Now, look at his body. And what part of his body looks so big that it kind of looks silly?
His ears.
His ears. His ears are, nope, you can tell me. His ears are so big that I do think they make him look silly. But with ears this big, he can hear really, really well. And if he's walking through the deserts and he's thirsty, he's going to put his ear to the sand. He's not going to hear water rushing through the sand, but he just might be lucky enough to hear bugs crawling deep in the sand. And if he hears a couple bugs, he's going to dig down in that sand and gobble up the bug as quickly as he can. He's thirsty, but he's eating bugs. Because the fox knows right in the middle of a bug's body is a puddle of water. So if he can eat a bunch of bugs, he's not going to be a thirsty fox anymore. So the ears help him hear really well. Now if you boys and girls used your quietest whispers to tell each other secrets, I probably wouldn't be able to hear, but the fox could. But do you know why it's okay to tell a secret in front of this fox? He might hear every word that you say, but I guarantee you he will never repeat your secret. It'll stay safe with him. Now, living in the deserts in Africa, what kind of food would this fennec fox eat? He'll eat bugs when he's thirsty, but what is he going to eat when he's hungry? Did you want to guess? Lizards. He would eat little lizards if he could find them? Definitely. Little animals, so give me an example of an animal this fox could eat in the deserts. He might eat mice, lizards, little snakes, they could be desert rats. Any kind of little animal he can find in the desert would be a good meal for him. Now, what color is the sand in the desert? Everyone tell me? Kind of light brown. Look at the color of his fur. His fur will kind of match the sand in the desert. So if he wants to hide, there aren't many things that he could hide behind. So he'll lay down flat in the desert sand, and he'll kind of camouflage or blend right in. From far away, he'll look like a bump in the sand. And many animals might see a bump in the sand, not even know that it's a fox, and just walk on by. Now, during the day in the desert, it is so hot, he needs to turn on his air conditioners. Do you think he has air conditioners? He does, right here. Air conditioner number 1, air conditioner number 2. The heat in his body travels up to the top of his head. And then from the head, it quickly escapes out those very big ears. So these big looking ears are going to keep him nice and cool. Now at night in the desert, it gets cold. Do you want an air conditioner on when it's cold outside? No way. That's when he wants to shut his air conditioner off. And he does that by putting on a hat. Where is he going to find a hat in the desert? Right here. At night, if he gets cold, he curls up in a tiny little ball. He takes his big fluffy tail and puts it right over his head to kind of shut off those air conditioners and help hold the heat in his body. Now, what animal is this? A fox. And it's a very special kind of fox called a fennec fox. Can you whisper that? Fennec fox. Awesome. He is the last desert animal. I did bring one animal from the African savannas. And my savanna animal is another reptile like the desert lizard. He's really big. But you know what? As big as this next reptile is, he's still a baby. He's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now when I take him out, he might show off by wiggling and jiggling. But I am going to ask you to stay very, very quiet and still. And I'm going to introduce you to Salvatore, the Savannah monitor. And this is Salvatore. And he is showing off, doing his wiggling and jiggling. Right now, he's so little that he thinks he has to show off and act mean and rough and tough. But by the time he's a grown-up, he's going to be so big, he won't have to act rough and tough. He'll be so big and so scary that if an animal comes near him, they'll just back away and leave. He won't have to act tough because he's going to look tough and scary. Now, he is a reptile. What other animal did I show you was a reptile? Please stop running and sit right there. Don't come in the front. Don't come in the front. Sit right there. You can't jump up and run around when the animals are out, okay, guys? Because you could scare them. So, what's he doing with his tongue? Yep, he's sticking it out. And why is he sticking it out? Is he a fresh boy? No. To smell, right? Can you see the two little holes that make his nose to help him breathe? Those holes don't help him smell. We're pretty lucky. The two holes on our nose, we can breathe with them and smell at the same time. The two little holes in his nose, he can breathe with. But the two little holes that help him to smell are up inside of his mouth. So he has to reach out with his tongue, grab some smells, put the tips of the tongue into the holes in order to figure out what he has just smelled. Now, what would this monitor lizard eat if he lived in the desert and he got hungry? What? He would not eat plants, but that's a good guess. There probably wouldn't be many, but he'd eat eggs. He would eat eggs. Something else?
Little creatures.
He could even eat big creatures if he wanted to, because he's going to be one big boy. If he were going to eat something and it was too big to put in his mouth, when you want to eat something that's too big to put in your mouth, what do you do to it? Cut it up, right. Do you think he has little knives to help him cut up his food? He kind of does. Those long, sharp claws are like little knives, and he can do a lot of cutting with those. His teeth are wicked sharp. He can bite things and break them off. Now, when he gets bigger, animals will stay away from his head. They don't want to get bitten by those teeth. They'll stay away from his claws because they don't want to get cut up by those claws. And they'll stay away from his tail because his tail will be so big and so strong and so powerful. If he whacked an animal in the leg, he might be able to break that animal's leg. So when monitors are grown-ups, they don't have very many enemies. Most animals see them and they skedaddle. Now, do you think a monitor lizard could get a sunburn if he were out in the sun too long? No, because this is another scaly animal, scaly just like the spiny-tailed lizard, and no lizard can get a sunburn because their scaly skin is made just like our fingernails. Now, what kind of lizard is this one? A monitor. And what's a really big, dangerous lizard in the savannas? A monitor. And what was the little lizard with that sharp-looking tail? The desert lizard. And what kind of bird was a symbol of peace and love? Dove. And What was the world's smallest fox? What kind was it? Who remembers? Do you remember? What did it have? Fennec. Let's say that together. Fennec fox. And who remembers what kind of animal Thomas was from Madagascar? Do you remember? A tenrec. Let's say that together.
Tenrec.
All right. So we saw 4 animals from the deserts, 1 animal from the savannas, and how many is 4 plus 1? 5. And if I brought 8 all together, how many are left? 3. And the next 3 animals are from the African rainforests. Next animal is really, really tiny. So we went from one of my bigger animals to one of my tinier animals. The next animal spends all of its life down on the ground, and do you know what it eats? It eats fruit. Who in this room eats fruit? But you know what? You would never share fruit with this next animal, because when this animal eats fruit, it wants old fruit, rotted fruit, smelly fruit, mushy, gushy, brown fruit. Who likes to eat fruit like that? Hopefully none of you. The next animal is amazing. The first reason it's amazing, it's an animal that is made inside out. Inside of our body we have our skeletons. This next animal is wearing her skeleton on the outside of her body. So you will see her skeleton. She's not dead, she's alive. Another reason this animal is amazing, her legs. Let's play an animal leg game. I'm going to say the name of an animal, and I'd like you boys and girls to tell me how many legs that animal has. You don't have to raise your hand, just tell me the number. Bird. 2. Awesome. Fox. 4. Monitor. 4. Desert lizard. 4. Elephant. 4. Hippopotamus. 4. Rhinoceros. 4. Lots of animals have 4 legs. How many legs does an ant have? 6. Good job. And a spider? 8. Excellent. If I told you the name of this next amazing animal, you would not be able to tell me how many legs they have. Because if this next friend were just a teeny tiny little baby, she may only have about 30 legs. But if she were a grown-up, she may have about 300 legs. I'm going to introduce you to Silly Millie, the rainforest millipede. Now this is Silly Millie. And on the outside of her body, everything that you see is her skeleton. So all this brownish color stuff that's kind of shiny is her skeleton. Now the word exit tells us the way to get out. Her skeleton is called an exoskeleton. Kind of like the word exit, letting us know it's right there on the outside. Now, I'm going to hold her up, and you might be able to see her legs. They're very, very short and very thin and kind of wiggly. Now, if I tried to count those legs, I would probably get a headache. They're so tiny and so wiggly, I would have a very difficult time checking out those legs. But I know an easy way to find out how many legs she has without even counting the legs. Look and see the lines going around her body. Those lines kind of break her body into special little body parts. And every part of her body almost has 4 legs. So if I really want to know how many legs Silly Millie the millipede has, I can count each body part 4 times, and that'll tell me how many legs she has. Now, would she like to eat a bug? No. What would she like to eat again?
Fruit.
fruit? Fresh fruit?
No. Rotten fruit.
Moldy,
Smelly
rotten,
fruit.
disgusting, smelly fruit, right. All right. And where would I get fruit like that?
In the garbage. Garbage?
Well, I don't go through people's garbage pails looking for fruit like that, but I can buy fruit at the store, put it in a brown paper bag, stick it in a little paper box down in my cellar and let it get rotted. And then I give it to the man.
If somebody falls down from like a fruit tree and was there for a long, long time.
Yep, if fruit falls on the ground and stays there a long, long time, it's going to rot, and that's what the fruit does in the rainforest, but it rots very quickly, because the rainforest is dark and wet and damp. Best place for fruit to rot quickly. But around here, I don't have any fruit trees, so I have to just keep her fruit in the basement. Do you think she eats a lot of fruit?
No.
No, she's very little, so she doesn't eat much fruit at all. Now, what animal has a skeleton on the outside? The millipede. And do you know what she can do with that skeleton? If she got really scared and an animal picked her up in the animal's mouth, the millipede can squeeze this special water out of little holes in her skeleton, and that water would make the animal's mouth burn. Do you think he'd try to swallow her after that? Think he might spit her right out?
Yeah.
And that's how a little millipede can stay safe. Now, what's on the outside of her body? Her skeleton. I have another animal friend that wears its skeleton on the outside of its body, and that one is a scorpion.
Scorpion. Oh,
But I can only take it out when you're awfully quiet. So Skittles the scorpion won't get scared. All the black stuff you see on the outside of the body is the scorpion skeleton. So this is the second animal that's kind of inside out. I think he just feels like he wants to go for a little run right now, so I'll keep a good eye on him. How many legs does a scorpion have?
I believe 10 or 8.
The second number was right. Which was the second number you said?
8.
8. The scorpion has 8 legs. 4 on one side, 4 on the other side. How many big pinchers do you see in front? Everyone tell me?
2.
He has one long tail with a stinger on the end with poison in the stinger. Now, if he were to sting me, what would happen to me? I wouldn't die. This is the biggest kind of scorpion in the world. It's called an emperor scorpion. And you know what? It has the weakest poison or venom. When a scorpion's pinchers are super duper big, that means if they're scared, they can pinch other animals that are bothering them. And it hurts when a scorpion pinches when the pinchers are that big. So he doesn't use his tail to stay safe. But when a scorpion has very tiny, very teeny, very delicate little pinchers, do you think you could get hurt if he pinched you?
No.
No way. So that's a scorpion with a powerful poison. Sometimes scorpions in the desert have tiny little gentle pinchers, so those are the ones you want to make sure never sting you. But the emperor scorpion from the African rainforest, this is a scorpion. If it stung you, it's going to hurt worse than a bee sting, but not kill you. So do you think I'd rather get pinched or stung by this scorpion?
Pinched.
Never pinched, because when he pinches, he hangs on for half an hour. And boy, does that hurt. So if he's going to hurt me, I would rather get stung. Hurts like a bad bee sting, but does a bee sting hurt for half an hour? Hurts for a couple minutes and then you forget all about it. So I would rather get stung by this kind of scorpion than pinched. Now what does this scorpion eat if he lives in the African rainforest?
Little creatures.
Little creatures like bugs. He would eat any kind of little bug that came along. Now, covering his ears, his legs, are the teeniest, tiniest little hairs. And in the rainforest, if a bug were to run by him, or a bug were to fly by him, when the bug moves by him, it makes the air move, which makes the delicate hairs on the scorpion's leg begin to move. And when those hairs begin to move, the scorpion knows to reach out, grab the bug, squish it in its pinchers, and then bring it to its mouth to gobble it up. So scorpions use their hairy legs to find their food. Would you guys like to find breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack using your legs? That could get pretty messy, pretty gooey with the kind of food we eat. But if you were a rainforest scorpion, that's how you'd be catching all your food. Now, what's on the outside of his body? Skeleton. What other animal did I show you had a skeleton on the outside?
Millipede.
Millipede. How many legs on each body part did the millipede have?
8.
4. And how does a millipede stay safe if an animal tries to pick it up in its mouth?
Squeeze out water that hot water.
Squeezes out water that's going to burn that animal's mouth. Awesome. What was that wicked big lizard I showed you? Who knows what that was called? The monitor. Who has heard of a Komodo dragon? That monitor was a cousin to a Komodo dragon. What is the smallest fox on earth? How do you understand? Say it out if you remember. You don't have to raise your hand. Into the F. Do you remember? Fennec. Good job. What was the little animal with the quills that could have more babies at once than any other animal? Tenrec. Awesome. What part of the desert lizard's body helped it to stay safe from big animals?
Spikes.
Spice on his tail. Awesome. And what animal was a symbol of peace and love? Dove. All right. Let me put the scorpion back in his box. Now, my next animal actually is not from Africa. It's from South America. So this animal is a boa constrictor.
Whoa. I knew that was
And you don't find boas in Africa. But you know what? You find pythons in Africa. But you know, my python at home is only this big. And I didn't think it would be very impressive. So instead of bringing a tiny python, I thought I would bring a larger boa constrictor. Silly Sally the snake. I'm going to hold her up so you can get a good look at her. I'm going to let you get a good look at her belly. Raise your hand if you notice the snake had 2 tiny little legs. Snakes don't have legs. Put your hands down. Hold up your hand if you noticed little arms. No arms. Fingers. No fingers. Toes. No toes. Claws. This snake does have claws. You would like to guess how many claws she has. Hold up your fingers to show me how many claws. Okay, 1, 5, 10, 5, 10, 5, 5, 2, 3, 5, 2, 10, 10, 5. You two are right. Hold up your fingers again. How many fingers were you holding up? Just 2. This snake has 2 tiny little claws. Now, who would like to guess where those claws are? Where do you think they are?
on her tongue.
They're not on her tongue. Where do you think they are?
I think they are like on her stomach.
They are on her stomach. What part of her stomach? Because she has a big, long stomach. Closer to her head, her middle, or her tail?
Her middle?
Her middle? Nope, they're not in the middle of her stomach. Where would you guess? Closer to her head or her tail? Because we said not in the middle. Nope. So where would you guess?
I knew it was
Closer to her
tail.
tail.
I knew it.
And I will show you right where her body ends and her tail begins. And that is right here. So this little part is her tail. All the rest of this is her body. And right under here where her tail and body come together, she has two teeny tiny little holes. And at each hole, I can feel the tip of a claw. Now, if this were a boy boa constrictor or a boy python, the claws would be big enough for you to see. But this is a girl, so the claws are very, very, very tiny. Now, she's covered with scales. Who can tell me two other scaly animals I showed you today? Can you tell me one?
Monitor lizard.
The monitor lizard, definitely. And can you tell me the other one?
Desert lizard.
And the desert lizard. So those are the three, the snake, the monitor lizard, and the desert lizard. Now, they all have scales, but the snake has to have special scales. The monitor and the other lizard have legs, so they would walk using their legs and their feet. Snakes don't have legs or feet, so they move around on their bellies. So the scales underneath on their belly are much, much bigger and thicker than the rest of the scales on their body. And as the snake goes over the sand and the rocks and up the trees, what do you think would happen to the scales on its belly that are rubbing on everything? What do you think?
They probably shed it all off.
Well, they begin to wear out. And before they wear out and get a hole on them, the snake will shed its skin. And I have a shed from, I think from this snake. Now, snakes do not shed because their skin is too small. That's just an old story somebody made up years ago that everybody thinks is true. A snake sheds its skin because the skin is getting old and worn out. And a couple months ago, this snake took off this old, worn out skin. And you can see on the bottom, there actually are some holes where the skin wore out so much that when the snake tried to take the skin off, it ripped and ripped and ripped some more. Now my snake sheds about once every 4 or 5 weeks. Now, what would a snake like this eat if it lived in the rainforest?
You?
Well, it's anything that's the right size. So who could guess something that might be the right size? Mice would be way too small, actually. Bees would be way too small. A big bird it could eat, a parrot maybe, because this snake could easily climb a tree.
It could probably eat peaches.
It would never eat fruit or vegetables. Isn't that crazy? It might eat
You?
Nope, I'm way too big.
You.
So snakes have to eat the right size food. This snake could eat an animal the size of a rabbit, or maybe a really big squirrel. But if an animal's too small, the snake cannot eat it. If an animal's too big, the snake cannot eat it. Now, how often do I feed my snake? This snake eats really big rats at my house. Who would like to guess how often? Well, what is not that much? You know what, guys? You can't sit there and play. How often do you think I feed the snake?
Probably twice a day.
Twice a day would actually be way too much. Can anyone else?
Once a day?
Once a day would be way too much.
Once a week?
Once a week for this snake would be way too much.
What the? Every Tuesday?
Every Tuesday would be once a week, and that would be way too much.
Once a month?
Once a month is all the snake eats. Who knows how many months are in a year? How many? So this snake eats 12 times a year. That's not very much, is it? Let me put this snake back in her box. Now that is the 8th animal, so what's the very next thing I should do before I do anything else? I'm not going to touch any more animals.
Wash your hands and after you.
Definitely wash hands, right. And boys and girls, if you play with the pet at your house or play with the pet at a friend's house, when you're all done, make sure the pets are put away, either in a cage, in a room, or outside in a pen. And then you want to make sure you wash your hands. Should you wash your hands after you touch a wild animal? Actually, you should never touch a wild animal. If there's wild animals in your yard, you should watch them, listen to them, but never ever touch them. Do you know most wild animals are afraid of people? And if you touch a wild animal, you're going to scare it. If you pick it up, that wild animal might get so scared, it might bite you or scratch you. And when some wild animals bite or scratch, you might have to go to the doctors and get a shot. Is that fun? No way. And some wild animals, when you pick them up, they might not bite or scratch, but they'll get so scared, they'll wiggle and jiggle, and then you could drop them and they could get hurt. Who likes learning about animals? Can you learn about animals by watching cartoons? Can you learn about animals by watching animal shows on TV? Awesome. Can you learn about animals by getting a great library book about animals?
Yes.
Can you learn about animals by sitting in your backyard? Yes. Someday, when you think there's nothing fun to do, ask Mom or Dad for some paper and pencils and crayons or markers. Go outside in your own yard and try to draw pictures of everything you see. Who will see birds in the yard? I bet everybody. Who would see squirrels or chipmunks in the yard? Who would see bugs in their yard? Try to draw a picture of every kind of bug
I saw
that
black
you can
snake in
see.
my backyard a very long
That's
time
going to keep you
ago.
busy for a while.
I've seen
So
a
there's
bird.
lots of fun things to do outside, looking at animals in your own yard. Who likes to color animal pictures?
So scared.
If you know the answer to this, don't shout it out, but raise your hand, okay? Who knows what animal is a symbol of peace and love?
A dove.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Who remembers what animal had a skeleton on the outside and two big inchers? Scorpion, awesome. Who remembers the name of the fox that was the smallest in the world?
I failed.
Who remembers what reptile had sharp points on its tail? The desert lizard, awesome. Who remembers what animal had a skeleton on the outside and eats gross rotted fruit? The millipede, awesome. Who remembers that big lizard that's related to a Komodo dragon? Monica, good job. Who remembers the little mammal that could have more babies than any other mammal? Do you remember that? 10 reptiles. How about an animal that was covered with scales, did not have arms or legs, but had claws? Forward. And you would be a mule, a scorpion, and you get a fox. And you get a desert lizard.
A desert lizard,
A
yes.
millipede,
I got
a
this
scorpion,
one.
a natural lizard.
Hey! Don't pick on the outside. Hey, let's get dogs. I said, why did we go to the lizard? I thought you were the lizard. I can't wait. But now it's in the lizard. Let's go.
Did I miss anybody? Anyone has a picture? All right. Thank you, boys and girls. If you have any questions, let's see.
Anyone in the way? Just so. The exact same picture now.
Bob, just give me 2 more seconds, okay? Right, now everybody's attention for just a second, please. Okay? Okay, we want to do a quick closing also. In the very beginning, I did not get a chance to have people sign in. If I could have people do a quick sign in. And also, just a couple balloons. We don't have a huge amount, but we do have a couple balloons. So if your child would like balloons, time, because I don't think we have a ton of them left over. Okay, so if we can just go time often, I would appreciate it. So if I can have our copiers and co-guides, copiers from the center. Connor?
Don't dump it.
Be careful, okay?
Somebody help him.
Okay?